Paralyzed with shock, she gripped her cotton dress while cruel laughter echoed throughout the space. Sophie Allen's complexion blazed crimson, her face burning with mortification and disbelief as humiliation pierced her core. The wealthy elite gathered at the charity event, adorned in sparkling evening wear and custom-tailored clothing, mocked and jeered while their smartphones captured every moment like scavengers surrounding wounded prey. Max, an arrogant, wealthy youth with perfectly styled hair, had just lifted her dress upward, revealing her undergarments to the entire assembly, his satisfied grin expanding as he declared, "Let's reveal what this ordinary girl chooses to wear beneath her clothes." His statement reverberated with malice and indifference, treating her personal dignity as entertainment for their pleasure. Chloe, the social media celebrity boasting millions of online admirers, broadcast the incident live while her tone dripped with maliciousness. "Everyone, observe today's servant's fashion choice." Sophie's legs shook uncontrollably, yet her gaze remained unwavering, with determination burning quietly within. During that instant, as the chamber whirled around her and mocking sounds overwhelmed her senses, nobody could have anticipated that in 1 minute's time, the gentleman who possessed the entire establishment, her spouse, would enter through those entrance doors and completely transform their reality. Listen, if this narrative is captivating your attention, please grab your device, press that approval button, leave feedback about what's resonating with you deeply, and follow our channel. Your support means the world to us and helps keep these narratives going. Let's experience Sophie's transformation side by side. Now, returning to the charity gala. The occasion was a spectacular gathering hosted in an elegant Manhattan estate converted into an exclusive social venue. Crystal fixtures spread golden illumination across gleaming stone surfaces. The atmosphere hummed with crystal glass chiming, silk fabric rustling, and the murmur of pretentious conversation. Social media personalities, technology executives, and inherited wealth descendants mingled, their attire displaying prosperity and social position. Every look represented unspoken rivalry. Sophie, wearing her modest knee-length dress, simple black footwear, and basic hairstyle, appeared like darkness against brilliant light. She had arrived as a temporary event coordinator, her graduate student income barely meeting housing costs. Her appearance was natural without cosmetics, her demeanor reserved yet focused, her movements confident while distributing event materials. However, to the gathering, she represented an outsider, an insignificant person who had no place among them, perfect prey for their refined brutality. While Sophie moved through the assembly carrying program materials, several young ladies in glittering party dresses obstructed her route, their amusement calculated and intentional. A dark-haired woman wearing a pearl hair accessory and displaying a malicious expression grabbed a program from her collection, allowing it to drift to the ground. "My mistake, how careless of me," she announced loudly enough to attract attention. "Perhaps you excel more at cleaning than serving, wouldn't you agree?" Her companions burst into laughter, one kicking the fallen paper beneath a table, compelling Sophie to crouch down and recover it. Nearby guests chuckled, several recording with their devices gleaming. Sophie's hands trembled slightly while retrieving the document, but she rose with composure, her expression serene. "My purpose here involves assistance, not providing amusement," she responded, her voice quiet yet resolute. The brunette woman smirked while tossing her hair. "Continue fantasizing," she replied, her friends cackling as Sophie departed, bearing the burden of their contempt against her shoulders. Chloe, a 25-year-old influencer sporting a platinum blonde haircut and a diamond necklace that announced recent celebrity status, noticed Sophie initially. She whispered to her group, women dressed in shimmering gowns, her voice rising above the background music. "Look at her. So unremarkable. That dress screams discount fashion." Her friends giggled, their perfectly manicured fingernails reflecting light while they examined Sophie's clothing critically. Chloe retrieved her device, beginning a live broadcast, her smile cutting like a blade. All right, everyone. Evaluate this style catastrophe. Domestic worker aesthetic, correct? Comments poured in, laughing symbols and cruel remarks accumulating. Sophie's grip tightened on the program stack, her knuckles losing color, but she continued moving, her pace steady, her focus directed forward. A mature lady in a sequined dress, her expression disapproving, caught Sophie's attention and sneered. "Darling, borrow appropriate clothing next time," she stated, her tone overflowing with condescension. Sophie paused, her gaze steady. "I'm present to contribute, not to entertain," she declared, her voice low yet firm. Several attendees raised their eyebrows, taken aback, but Chloe dismissed this with eye-rolling, her device still recording. During the busy reception period, a gentleman in a fitted formal suit, his sleeve accessories gleaming, approached Sophie while she restocked appetizer trays. He leaned closer, his breath reeking of alcohol, his voice loud enough for surrounding guests to hear. "You understand they employ individuals like you, so we're spared from looking at you," he stated, his smile cruel, his eyes sparkling with privilege. Guests around him laughed, some applauding, their entertainment fueling his arrogance. "Remain in the kitchen from now on," he added, dismissing her like hired help. Sophie's tray shifted slightly, her fingers gripping the rim tighter, but she met his stare, her voice unwavering. "I'm here fulfilling my responsibilities," she said, her words gentle yet sharp. The gentleman laughed while turning toward his companions, but several guests shifted uncomfortably, their smiles disappearing as Sophie walked away, her braided hair swaying, her self-respect preserved despite the sting. Max, a 24-year-old heir with a luxury watch glinting under illumination, strutted over with a predatory expression, his companions following like hunting pack members. "What's the situation, Chloe?" "The staff attempting to fit in," he announced loudly enough for nearby crowds to chuckle. He circled Sophie, his expression mocking, his voice resonating. "That appearance, that outfit. You're not even making an effort, are you?" The laughter intensified, a frigid wave washing over her. Sophie's cheeks reddened, her program collection trembling slightly, but she maintained her position, her posture erect. "What I wear holds less importance than how I treat others," she stated, her voice calm, each word intentional, striking like stones in motionless water. The room quieted momentarily, some guests nodding, impressed by her composure. However, Max simply threw back his head, laughing. "Oh, please spare us the lecture," he said, his tone thick with disdain, his friends encouraging him. Near the Gala's magnificent stairway, a group of influencers assembled with their devices raised, filming Sophie as she passed, carrying beverage trays. One woman, wearing artificial fur and possessing a nasal laugh, called out, "Hey, budget girl, pose for the camera." She zoomed in while her followers filled the chat with mocking symbols. "That dress screams thrift store discount section," she announced, her voice carrying over the music. The crowd laughed, some joining the filming, their camera flashes blinding. Sophie's steps wavered, a glass wobbling on her tray, but she stabilized it, her gaze fixed ahead. "I'm working, not modeling," she said, her voice low, cutting through the jeers. The woman smirked, undaunted, and threw a cocktail napkin at Sophie's feet, forcing her to stop and retrieve it. "Clean that up as well," she said, her friends cackling. Sophie collected the napkin, her hands steady, but her breathing hitched, a small crack in her composure. Before Sophie could proceed, a man in a velvet jacket, his hair slicked with product, blocked her path while holding red wine. "You're destroying the atmosphere," he said, his voice loud, his eyes examining her stained dress. "Why don't you hurry back to the employee area?" He tilted his glass, allowing wine drops to splash onto her shoes, drawing gasps and laughter from the crowd. "There, now you coordinate," he said, his smirk wide. Sophie's tray trembled, her fingers gripping it firmly, but she looked at him, her voice calm. "My work isn't for your entertainment," she said, her words soft yet cutting. The man laughed, but several guests shifted, their laughter faltering as Sophie stepped around him, her braided hair swaying, her determination intact. The cruelty intensified suddenly. Max, encouraged by the crowd's amusement, moved closer, his hand striking out like a serpent. Before Sophie could react, he grasped her dress and pulled it upward, exposing her to the flashing cameras and screaming audience. "Let's see what discount fashion looks like underneath," he shouted, his smirk wide, his eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. The room erupted. Phones raised high, capturing every second of her shame. Sophie's hands flew to her dress, pulling it down, her body shaking, her breath catching in her throat like a trapped creature. Chloe, still live-streaming, leaned in, her voice vicious, her phone angled to catch Sophie's flushed face. "Don't dress that way if you don't want attention, sweetheart." The words cut deeply, the crowd's laughter becoming a tidal wave drowning out the music. Sophie's knees weakened slightly, but she didn't flee, didn't weep. She stood there, her face burning, her hands trembling, but her eyes fierce, a quiet storm brewing beneath her calm exterior. As Sophie attempted to regain her stability, a woman in a glittering gold dress, her expression tight with disgust, pushed past, knocking a champagne glass from Sophie's tray. The liquid splashed across her chest, soaking her blouse, drawing more laughter from the crowd. "Look at that! She can't even manage a tray properly," the woman said, her voice loud, her smile cruel. "Perhaps you're better at cleaning than serving." The crowd roared, some clapping, their phones still raised. Sophie's blouse clung to her skin, her hands shaking, but she steadied the tray, her eyes narrowing. "I'm here to work," she said, her voice steady, each word quiet defiance. The woman smirked while turning away, but several guests looked away, their laughter fading as Sophie stood tall, her strength a silent reproach. In a ballroom corner, a group of young men in tailored suits gathered, their voices carrying as they mocked Sophie's appearance. One, a hedge fund heir with a smug expression, called out, "Hey, charity case, who authorized your presence outside the back room?" He threw a shrimp appetizer at her, the sauce splattering on her dress, drawing cheers from his friends. "That's an improvement," he shouted, his laugh loud and harsh. The nearby crowd joined in, their amusement becoming a cold wave. Sophie's hands clenched, her tray slipping slightly, but she caught it, her eyes meeting his. "Your accuracy requires improvement," she said, her voice low and sharp, cutting through the laughter. The man's grin wavered, but his friends continued jeering as Sophie walked away, her dress now painted with stains, her resolve unbroken. In that moment, with the room spinning and the jeers deafening, Sophie retrieved her phone. Her fingers, though trembling, moved precisely as she dialed, her voice cutting through the laughter loud and clear. "Hello, it's me. I was just publicly attacked and harassed. There are numerous witnesses." She paused, her eyes locking onto Chloe and Max, who exchanged worried glances, their smirks fading. "Can you come address this, counselor?" she said, her tone calm but laced with steel, each word a hammer striking stone. The room's laughter died, unease spreading like wildfire. Chloe's live-stream chat slowed, question marks and confused emojis appearing. Max shifted, his Rolex catching the light, his voice shaky. "What? Calling your mother?" he said, attempting to laugh, but his bravado cracked. Sophie slipped her phone back into her pocket, her gaze never wavering, her silence a warning that hung heavy in the air. The mockery continued. Chloe, sensing the crowd's wavering attention, grabbed orange juice from a passing server and with a high-pitched giggle poured it over Sophie's dress. "Oops, must have slipped. The fabric is so thin," she said mockingly, her eyes glinting with malice. The juice soaked through, staining the fabric, dripping onto the marble floor in slow, mocking drops. The crowd roared, some clapping, others filming, their phones a constellation of cruelty. Max, not to be outdone, bumped Sophie's shoulder hard, sending her stumbling into the dessert table. A tray of cupcakes toppled, smearing frosting on her shoes, the room's loud. Water swelling like a thunderstorm. Sophie caught herself, her hands gripping the table's edge, her breath sharp, her dress dripping, her shoes sticky. She straightened, her eyes fierce, unbowed, quiet resolve holding her together. The ballroom doors burst open with force that stopped every sound in the room. A team of bodyguards in black suits entered, their presence like a thunderclap, their eyes scanning the crowd with cold precision. Behind them walked Lucas Allen, a 30-year-old billionaire with steel gray eyes and quiet intensity that shifted the atmosphere. The crowd parted, whispers rippling like waves as he moved straight to Sophie. He reached her side, his hands gentle as he helped her up, his handkerchief wiping the juice from her dress with care. The room held its breath, phones lowering, laughter vanishing. Lucas turned to the crowd, his voice loud, clear, and unyielding, cutting through the silence like a blade. "This is my wife, Sophie Allen. This party, I threw it to celebrate her completing her Ph.D. in international law." Gasps echoed, faces paling, the room's energy flipping like a switch. He continued, his tone cold as ice. "Those who mocked, assaulted, and humiliated her are now permanently banned from any event I host. Legal action for public assault begins immediately." As Lucas spoke, a young woman in a sapphire gown who'd thrown the cocktail napkin earlier froze, her phone slipping from her hand, clattering to the floor. "I didn't mean it," she stammered, her voice barely audible, her eyes wide with panic. Sophie looked at her, her braid swaying slightly, her expression calm but unyielding. "Intentions don't erase actions," she said, her voice soft but firm, each word a quiet judgment. The woman stepped back, her face crumpling as the bodyguards moved toward her group, their presence a silent verdict. The crowd watched, some murmuring, as Sophie's strength reshaped the room, her words a catalyst for change, turning cruelty into accountability. Max and Chloe dropped to their knees, their faces white, their voices trembling with desperation. "Please, we didn't know," Max stammered, his Rolex glinting as his hands shook, his earlier swagger gone. "Please don't ruin us," Chloe begged, her phone forgotten on the floor, her live stream still running, capturing her collapse in real time. Sophie stood beside Lucas, her dress stained, her shoes smeared with frosting, but her posture regal, her eyes steady, quiet fire burning within. She didn't gloat, didn't smile, just looked at them, her silence louder than their pleas, a testament to her strength. The bodyguards moved forward, escorting Max, Chloe, and their clique out, the crowd parting like a sea, their earlier laughter replaced by stunned, heavy silence that pressed against every chest. Moments after the bodyguards left, an elderly man in a tweed suit, a renowned philanthropist who'd remained silent during the ordeal, approached Sophie, his hands clasped. "Your composure is a lesson in dignity," he said, his voice low, his eyes earnest. "I should have spoken up." Sophie nodded, her hands folding neatly, her smile faint but warm. "It's never too late to stand up," she said, her voice soft but firm, each word a quiet challenge. The man nodded, stepping back, his face thoughtful as Sophie's presence continued to shift the Gala's narrative, her strength a beacon that inspired change even in those who'd stood by. The mood in the room shifted, the crowd's cruelty melting into awe, then shame as the truth settled over them. A woman in a velvet dress who'd laughed at Sophie's dress approached, her voice small, her eyes downcast. "I'm so sorry," she said, her hands twisting nervously. "I didn't know who you were." Sophie nodded, her expression neutral. her braid swaying slightly. "It's done," she said, her voice soft but final, a line drawn in the sand. Others followed, their apologies stumbling, their faces flushed with regret. A young man, a tech startup founder who'd filmed the assault, deleted his video, his hands shaking as he muttered, "I shouldn't have." Sophie didn't respond, just adjusted her dress, her movements deliberate, her dignity a shield that needed no words. Lucas stood beside her, his presence a quiet fortress, his eyes never leaving her, a silent vow of unwavering support. Minutes after Lucas's announcement, a young waiter, unnoticed during the chaos, approached Sophie, holding out a business card that had fallen from her pocket. "You dropped this," he said, his voice low, his eyes wide with respect. The card read, "Sophie Allen, PhD candidate, international law," its university logo catching the light. Sophie took it, her fingers brushing the edge, and nodded, her smile faint but warm. "Thank you," she said, slipping it back into her pocket. The waiter stepped back, his posture straighter, as if her presence had lifted him. The crowd nearby watched, some murmuring, the card's significance dawning, a quiet clue to her truth that now shone like a spotlight, amplifying Lucas's revelation. The gala's atmosphere changed, the air heavier, charged with new respect that hadn't been there before. Guests who'd mocked Sophie now avoided her gaze, their champagne glasses untouched, their laughter silenced. A reporter from a lifestyle magazine, her notebook open, approached cautiously, her voice respectful. "Mrs. Allen, can I ask about your work?" she said, her pen poised. Sophie paused, her fingers brushing a stray braid behind her ear, her eyes thoughtful. "I study how laws can protect the vulnerable," she said, her voice calm, each word weighted with purpose. "It's about justice, not revenge." The reporter nodded, scribbling furiously, her earlier snark replaced by genuine admiration. Sophie's words hung in the air, a reminder of the power in quiet resolve, a beacon for those who'd underestimated her. During a quiet moment, a teenage girl, a +1 in a borrowed gown, slipped through the crowd to Sophie's side, her eyes wide with awe. "I saw what they did," she said, her voice trembling. "You didn't let them break you. How?" Sophie looked at her, her hands folding neatly, her smile soft but fierce. "You choose what defines you," she said, her voice steady, each word a spark. "Their words don't get to decide who you are." The girl nodded, her eyes shining, and walked away, her posture taller, as if Sophie's strength had woven itself into her. Lucas, standing nearby, watched, his coffee cup warm in his hands, his eyes soft with pride, a silent witness to her quiet power. Sophie's presence grew as the night wore on, not through flash or volume, but through the sheer force of her grace. A group of younger guests, college students invited as +1s, gathered near her, their eyes wide with curiosity and respect. One, a shy girl in a borrowed dress, her hands fidgeting, spoke up. "How do you stay so calm when they're so mean?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the soft music. Sophie looked at her, her smile faint but warm, her hands folding neatly in front of her. "You choose what matters," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Anger's loud, but strength's quiet." The girl nodded, her shoulders straightening, as if Sophie's words had planted a seed of courage. Lucas watched from a distance, coffee in his hand, his eyes soft with quiet pride that spoke louder than any speech. A few days later, an older guest, a philanthropist who'd stayed silent during the incident, sent Sophie a handwritten note delivered to the event agency. "I was wrong to stand by," it read. "Your grace changed how I see strength." Sophie read it at her desk, her fingers tracing the paper, and tucked it away, her eyes distant but warm. The note, simple but sincere, joined the business card in her pocket, a quiet reminder of her impact, the crowd's earlier cruelty now a fading echo, replaced by growing respect, her story spreading through whispers, a testament to her resilience that reshaped the Gala's legacy. The consequences came swiftly, without fanfare, like the tide rolling in, steady and inevitable. Chloe's live stream, meant to mock, backfired spectacularly. Her followers turned on her, flooding her comments with outrage, her brand deals evaporating like morning dew. A luxury fashion house dropped her as an ambassador, their statement citing behavior incompatible with our values in a single damning line. Max faced a harsher reckoning. His family's business, tied to Lucas's vast investments, received a call. His father's board membership was revoked, their influence crumbling overnight. The woman in the sequined gown who'd sneered at Sophie's dress found her charity gala invitations rescinded, her social circle shrinking like a deflated balloon. None faced Sophie's wrath. She didn't need to act. The truth did the work, balancing the scales with precision that left no room for doubt. Sophie didn't linger in the gala's aftermath. She returned to her quiet life, her studies, her part-time job at the event agency. Her co-workers didn't know about the gala, just saw her as the woman who always showed up early, who organized schedules with meticulous care, who never snapped under pressure. But there was a change in her now, subtle but undeniable. The way she carried herself, the way she met people's eyes, it was bolder, more grounded, like she'd reclaimed a piece of herself. A co-worker, a chatty woman with bright earrings and a warm laugh, noticed it one day as they sorted invitations. "You seem stronger lately," she said, stacking envelopes beside her. Sophie smiled, a small private curve of her lips, and kept working, her hands steady, her heart a little lighter than before. A week later, Sophie was back at the venue, not as a guest but as a volunteer, helping with a charity event for underprivileged students. She moved through the room, her dress simple, her shoes flat, her braid neat as always. A young girl, maybe 15, approached, her eyes wide with recognition, clutching a program like a lifeline. "Are you the one from the gala?" she asked, her voice shy but eager. Sophie nodded, her smile soft, her presence warm. "Keep studying," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You're enough just as you are." The girl beamed, her shoulders straightening, as if Sophie's words had lifted a weight she'd carried too long. Lucas watched from the sidelines, his presence quiet, his eyes warm with pride. He didn't interrupt, just let her shine, her grace filling the room like soft, steady light. The gala's legacy spread beyond the mansion's gilded walls, its story taking root in the city's collective memory. A local news outlet ran a feature. "The PhD student who humbled an elite crowd," the article praising Sophie's poise, her intellect, her quiet strength. The footage of Lucas's entrance played on repeat, his words a rallying cry for decency. Community groups reached out, inviting Sophie to speak, to inspire others with her story. She accepted a few, her talks simple but powerful, her message unwavering. Dignity isn't bought, it's lived. She stood before audience. Her voice steady, her presence a reminder that true power doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to dazzle. It just needs to stand. Sophie's past flickered in small, unspoken moments, like shadows cast by a passing cloud. A locket around her neck, rarely opened, held a photo of a younger her standing beside her parents. Their faces stern but proud, their expectations a weight she'd learned to carry lightly. She'd touch it sometimes, her fingers lingering on the worn silver before tucking it away, a quiet tether to her roots. A phrase overheard at the gala, "You're nothing without a name," made her pause once, her eyes distant, her hands stilling on her braid. She didn't speak of her family's wealth. the disciplined upbringing that had shaped her resilience, the choices she'd made to live simply. She didn't need to. Her actions, her strength, her grace said enough, louder than any title or fortune ever could. The mansion felt different now, its chandeliers casting softer glow, its marble floors warmer underfoot. Guests spoke of Sophie, asked about her, shared her story with quiet reverence. The staff enforced stricter conduct rules, their eyes sharper, their tolerance for cruelty vanished. New events brought new faces, some inspired by her, their outfits simpler, their smiles braver, their presence a quiet echo of her own. Sophie didn't seek the attention, didn't crave the praise. She just kept working, kept studying, kept showing up. Her plain dress, a symbol of something bigger, resilience, truth, the unshakable power of standing tall. It's strange how 1 minute can rewrite everything, how a woman in a simple dress can face a storm of cruelty and leave it silent, her strength a beacon in the dark, how the loudest mockers end up humbled, their pride shattered by a truth they couldn't see. Sophie didn't need their fear or their regret. She just needed to stand, to speak, to let her grace shine. And it did, brighter than any chandelier, stronger than any storm. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow me. Thnack you.